Look out.
Pressure, Dungy. Blasted off the corner by Xavier Thomas.
Welcome to Season 3, Episode 4 of the Nachos and Analysis College Football Show. I am your host, Drew Archer, and I'm by myself today. Matthew having a little travel issues coming back from an out-of-town trip this weekend, so you get me solo. So that combined with no Clemson football game to review, this is going to be a bit of a shorter episode, but as always, thank you for joining the show. I'm just right off the top, since Matthew and I don't have any banner to do, going to just shout out Pump Monkey from the very beginning. Pump Monkey Septic Service, our loyal sponsor here on the college football show, as well as our college baseball and softball show, Ball Talk. Pump Monkey Septic Service, owned and operated by Clemson alumni Alan Powell. They service the upstate of South Carolina. You can reach them at 864-710-2211. They're on Facebook, Instagram, and again, Alan Powell is a Clemson alumni. He still lives in the community of Clemson, South Carolina. So if you have septic tank issues, think you might have septic tank issues, give him a call. Mickey Plyler with 105.5 The Roar gave him a call, and Alan Powell, super honest dude, informed Mickey he did not have a septic tank issue. He had some plumbing issues that he needed to get looked at. So give Alan Powell a call for honest work and good work. Again, 864-710-2211. All right, so the week that was college football, me personally, I was excited for this weekend. It always sucks when there's a bye week. You don't have your team to watch and pay attention to. I went to the Georgia game in Atlanta. The following week, went to the App State game. And on top of just a busy personal life, this was probably the first weekend in about 2 months that I had to just spend at home. And I watched 12 hours of football Friday, 12 hours of football Sunday. It was a great weekend. And it's always a great weekend when you have a bye and two of your biggest rivals just have a bad week. I'm referring to the LSU South Carolina game as well as the Memphis Florida State game. LSU South Carolina first. That was a great game. That was a game that South Carolina should have won. They had a 17-point lead at one point. The environment there was fantastic. It caused a couple penalties at one point. There was a procedural penalty on LSU, and the camera cut to Shane Beamer, and he just pointed to the crowd saying, "That's on you. That's for you. That's from you. Thank you." So it was an electric environment there at Williams-Brice Stadium. South Carolina played really well in that first half, and LSU slowly but surely worked their way back into the game. And there towards the end, it seemed like every time LSU was able to score, was able to get a little bit of momentum, they'd give up a big play to South Carolina. But in the end, it came down to a game-winning field goal for LSU. I think I tweeted it out this weekend that South Carolina fans are known for maybe dipping out and leaving a little early in games that aren't going their way. It was kind of nice to see the hope in the fan base, see them hang around to the bitter end only to see them lose. So South Carolina falls 36-33 to LSU. And then the other game I mentioned, Memphis, Florida State. Florida State is just dysfunction. This is the first time in the last 50 years, the third time in the last 50 years that Florida State has started 0-3. I believe that last time was maybe 2021, just a few short years ago. But this team is just off. This is a team that is full of talented players that they just can't put it together. DJ Uiagalelei, we know who he is as Clemson fans. He'll make a throw that you're like, wow, that kind of reminds me of the DJ that went to South Bend, Indiana his freshman year. And then he'll make another play that is a play that we've become all too accustomed. Overthrowing receivers, throwing balls in the dirt, that kind of thing. And this team is just not gelling in Florida State right now. And then another big game this weekend, a familiar foe. Georgia went to Lexington, Kentucky, and struggled. It seems like Georgia struggles every time they make that trip to Kentucky, at least in recent memory. It was a close game to the very end, but Georgia ends up pulling it out 13-12. So those are some of the games that I had my eye on this weekend. No game, as we said, to review. So we're going to jump right in it with our Twitter poll.
Twitter polls.
All right, our Twitter poll of the week. As always, if you do not follow us on Twitter or X, give us a follow at nachos_analysis. We'll post this each Monday. And this is a way for you, the listener, to get your voice heard, participate in the poll, leave comments, that sort of thing. So thank you to everybody who participates each week. This poll was a very, very lopsided poll this week. The question was, why is Dave Doeren so unlikable? The options were, in quotes, laptops, constant complaining, his face. I thought more people would have voted for that one. And then all of the above. Before we discuss this one, a couple listener response. Dylan gets in. He put a quote from Dave Doeren. I'm trying to remember the year. It might have been 2018, I believe, referring to the game where NC State may or may not have had a dirty hit that put Wayne Gallman out of the game. He quoted it and saying, we knocked their running back out. That comment there on top of the hit that Gallman took in that game definitely rubbed Clemson fans the wrong way. And then Alex Gibbs gets in and says, the ones that voted anything but all of the above didn't follow directions in school. Read your options, people. I agree with Dylan there because all of the above are acceptable answers. Laptops, constant complaining, his face. And that is the way the voting shook out. Laptops got 2% of the vote. His face, 3%. Constant complaining got 5%. And then all of the above getting 90%. Dave Doeren is just one of those guys. He just has something to complain about everything. I saw some comments, him referring to being a noon game in Clemson, talking about how hot it is. I don't know what Dave Doeren's background is or knowledge is of geography, but I would assume that Raleigh, North Carolina tends to be a bit hotter than the upstate of South Carolina, but what do I know? So he's just someone that always complains. He just kind of rubs people the wrong way, and just not one of those likable guys.
Fact or fiction?
All right, fact or fiction. Each week we throw out a few statements, fact or fiction. Matthew and I discuss. This week you just get me discussing it. So I try to do a better job of putting these out on Twitter for you, the listener, and our folks on Twitter that follow along to be able to get their input here. So the first one, fact or fiction. Clemson picks right back up where they left off offensively Saturday versus NC State. I'm going to say fiction because of the wording right back where they left off. I think that we're gonna see an offense that looks way more like the App State performance than the Georgia performance. I think the offense showed that with the right people in the right positions that kind of have that chemistry with Cade Klubnik, you're going to see more offensive production. Another thing to look at too, last week, this line in this matchup between Clemson and NC State was at 7.5 points. As of Tuesday, when I'm recording this, it is 20 points. It was as low as 17 on Sunday, I believe. So that number has crept up. A lot of that has to do with McCall being out, the starting quarterback, the transfer from Coastal Carolina. But that number has swayed from 7 points last week to 20 at this point. I think the offense is going to continue to show signs of improvement. Are we going to take all our starters out at halftime? No, we're not going to be to that point. But I do think you're going to be pleased with what you see out of this Clemson offense. Fact or fiction, Florida State reaches 4 wins this season. Right now, I do not see that happening. Right now, you're sitting at 0-3. You are 0-2 in conference play. They have Cal, new member of the ACC, this weekend at home. Cal, surprisingly 3-0. So could be a competitive game there. SMU maybe not performing quite to the level that a lot of people thought in their first year, but Florida State has shown that they struggled. They have to go on the road for this matchup. So I'm going to say that Florida State splits those games there. So one win there. Then they have Clemson coming to town. Tigers win that one, so that's not a win. Duke, I'll give them that win. They're going to lose to Miami. They're going to lose to North Carolina, lose to Notre Dame, win at Charleston Southern, and then the game that's probably going to baffle everyone's mind and no one's going to know what to do, Florida State, Miami at the end of the season in Tallahassee. So I have Clemson or Florida State right there at 4 wins. I do not see them exceeding that. And just after an entire offseason of Florida State fans complaining, they're mad at Kirk Herbstreit because obviously he is the one that kept them out of the college football playoff. They're mad at all of these people. They've been complaining. They've been obnoxious all offseason. And for the way that for them to start this season off as an outsider, as someone who actively roots against Florida State, it's been quite enjoyable. So I'm going to say, how did I word that one there? Florida State reaches 4 wins. I'll say fact, they reach 4 wins. They do not go over. They do not get 5, and they do not go to a bowl game. Fact or fiction, South Carolina is Clemson's most difficult remaining opponent. That could very well be the case. South Carolina's defense does look, they look pretty good. Clemson's schedule does set up favorably for the rest of the year. You thought this opening stretch of Georgia, App State, NC State, excluding Stanford, then at Florida State was going to be a tough run. But with what we've seen out of NC State so far, even with McCall in at quarterback, they have not gelled very well. And then the way that Florida State's performed. So this stretch we thought was going to be a tough stretch for the Tigers. Not so much. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say fact. South Carolina is Clemson's most difficult remaining opponent.
Weekly picks.
All right. Reviewing week 3 pick'em contest. It was a great week for both Matthew and I. We both went 3-1 on the weekend. Matthew, for his favorite, took Maryland minus 2.5. His underdog, he took Boston College. I took that as well. That was plus 17 points there. His over was Oregon State. The only picks that did not hit for both of us were our unders. He had New Mexico at Auburn at 61.5. That one hit the over. For mine, I was feeling bold when I saw this line, Tennessee minus 49. I don't think I've ever picked a favorite with that big of a point spread. But Tennessee, I believe, was winning 66-0 at halftime or something like that. As I mentioned, I took Boston College as an underdog at Mizzou. My over Arkansas State versus Michigan, that over hit. And then I took the under in LSU, South Carolina. That did not hit there. So the way week 4 is going to go, obviously Matthew's not here with me to give his picks. I'm going to throw mine out, and then we're going to add a video of Matthew giving his picks. So taking a look at my favorite, Tennessee on the road facing Oklahoma for the first time as an SEC opponent. Tennessee's a 7-point favorite. I'm taking Tennessee as my favorite pick this week. Underdog, Georgia Tech travels to Louisville, Kentucky as a 10.5-point underdog. I'm going with the Yellow Jackets to cover and make it a tough game on the Cardinals. My over, Illinois at Nebraska. I like what I've seen out of Nebraska. 43.5 points seems doable with what both of these teams have been able to do offensively so far this season. And as I mentioned a couple episodes ago, and from last season as well, I love Iowa unders. Iowa travels to Minnesota this weekend, under set at 35.5. I'm hoping for low points there. So that is my picks this week.
Hello, everyone. Just popping in here while editing. Sorry about missing this episode. I was in Moab, Utah this weekend. On the way back home, tractor trailer crossed into oncoming traffic, spilled oil all over the eastbound I-70, shut it down, sent everybody through this like tiny little mountain road. Took us about 12 hours to do a 5.5 hour drive. So I think all I have to do here is just insert some of my picks for this week, and I will go ahead and say that this one was a little harder because me and Drew will typically hide our picks from each other until we record, but this time, since Drew recorded separately and I'm just recording after, I already saw his picks. There were a couple that I wanted to pick too, but I refrained. So I'll start off with favorite for week 4. I'm going Boston College, -6.5 versus Michigan State. Like what Boston College has been doing this year. Picked them last week as my underdog in that hit, so let's roll with them as the favorite. This one should be tough, though. Michigan State is undefeated. And then moving to underdog, I like Navy to keep it close with Memphis. Just Navy's offense is very slow, takes a lot of time off the clock, hard to score a lot of points. Memphis is good. Obviously, they beat Florida State last week. But 9.5, I like Navy to keep that one close. Maybe Memphis will be a little bit too high on themselves after that big win. And I will say the 2 picks that I wanted to take that I saw that Drew had already done were favorite and underdog. His Tennessee, Oklahoma, and Georgia Tech, Louisville. But my over this week, I'm going Tennessee, Oklahoma. That right now is plus 57.5. I think that's going to be a pretty high scoring game. Tennessee looks like an electric offense, something like LSU 2019 maybe. And then lastly for under, I'm going Virginia versus Coastal Carolina. That is 55.5 right now. Not sure Virginia's offense is going to get after it that much. I think that one might be pretty close. So once again, I'm sorry for missing this episode, but we will get back to it next week to review this NC State game.
As of week 3, I have 7 total points on the season. Matthew and I still got to figure out a punishment for the loser, and Matthew has 9. So Matthew has a 2-point lead on me with the contest so far this season. Let's look at the matchup this weekend against NC State, happening at noon this weekend on ABC. I threw this out there on Twitter. With the SEC no longer partnering with CBS and the big deal that the SEC and ESPN have, I saw people speculating in the preseason that there were going to be a lot more of these primetime matchups with SEC teams. Some of the most primetime spots are noon, 3:30, and 7:30, which sometimes flexes to 8 o'clock on ABC. So far this season, each of those 3 time slots on ABC, noon, 3:30, and 7:30, 8 o'clock, have featured at least one SEC team, and many of them have been SEC matchups. This weekend, when NC State comes to town, this will be the first non-SEC ABC primetime slot of the season. It only took 4 weeks. But overall, the Tigers lead the series 60-30 with 1 tie. At home, Clemson leads with 30 wins, 11 losses, and a tie. The last meeting came in October of last year. Tigers on the road in Raleigh fall to the Wolfpack 24-17. And as I mentioned, heading into this game, that spread has risen. The Tigers are a 20.5-point favorite, over under at 48.5. And as I also mentioned, McCall out at quarterback. This weekend he left last Saturday's game with an undisclosed injury. And Doeren said this week that he was day-to-day, but C.J. Bailey, the true freshman, will start in Death Valley this weekend. Clemson's attempting to earn its 800th all-time win. Clemson would become just the 14th FBS program to ever record 800 wins. They would also become the first ACC program to reach that number. Tigers are also attempting to improve to 99-15 against ACC opponents, including postseason play. This dates back to 2011. Tight end Jake Brenningstool, who has 976 receiving yards. He needs just 24 to join Jordan Leggett, John Mackin, Dwayne Allen, and Benny Cunningham as the 5th tight end in school history to reach 1,000 career receiving yards. So that's career. Clemson won 8 of its last 9 ACC openers. Under Dabo Swinney, Clemson is 16-4 in games immediately following regular season open dates. I had a trivia question here from Matthew. I'm just going to just read it out. Me personally, I grew up in York County, Rock Hill, Clover area. So my trivia question was kind of related to that. The Tigers and Wolfpack first met in 1899. The question was going to be, where was this match? The first time they faced each other was in Rock Hill, South Carolina. Clemson won that game 24-0. It was just the 4th year of Clemson football and the 16th game in program history. Looking at a moment in this rivalry, the Textile Bowl's history, and I'd kind of forgotten about it till I was reading through Ross Taylor's game day notes that he sends out. But in 2019, Clemson warmed up in all white for the primetime game against NC State. But during pregame, they learned that Wake Forest lost to Virginia Tech, and a Clemson win that evening would clinch the ACC Atlantic Division title. Dabo gathered the team at the end of warm-ups and told them to get the orange pants on. Let's go. And a lot of the team did not know that the orange pants traveled with them. But the Tigers jumped to an early 42-0 halftime lead and ended up winning that game 55-10, clinching the division victory there. So that's what we're looking at this weekend. 800th all-time program win. That's a big feat to get to. But as far as this weekend, looking forward to getting back out to Death Valley. A nice early morning tailgating. Should be cool temperatures. Should be a nice day. Have a little breakfast out there and go get a win and get on back home to watch the rest of the slate. I think the Tigers win this game. I don't know that they cover. I kind of like that 17 that was a lot of sports books were showing earlier in the week. Though I do feel confident we're gonna see the offense continue to improve. But I don't know that the Tigers necessarily win by 20, but I do think the Tigers get their first ACC victory of the year before they host new ACC member Stanford next weekend. That game has been announced for 7 o'clock. So again, short episode. Appreciate everybody joining. As always, like, subscribe, follow on all the major social media platforms. Appreciate you, the listener. I know Matthew would say the same thing. Without you, the listener, it would just be Matthew and I just talking into a mic. So we do appreciate y'all following along, participating each week in our polls. Shout out to you, the listener. Thank you. And join us next week where we will talk some ball. Peace.